right, welcome everybody. I'm here with Christian Salisbury today, a yogi, a luthier, a business owner, music enthusiast, and overall all-around cool dude. So thank you, Christian, for being here.
Oh, I just hit my microphone. This is my number one pet peeve that I go through on a regular basis, and I just did it.
I should also mention he's a sound engineer.
I am a sound, and okay, let's see if I can do the chest pat. Thank you. That was
Thank you for being here.
Very nice introduction. That was fantastic.
So, your episode 2, I had Peter on last week.
Fantastic.
And we had a nice little conversation. And he's also my brother-in-law.
This is true. We're brothers.
Yeah, by law.
By law.
Not by choice necessarily.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
I choose this. So, I wanted to ask you, you are a yogi.
I am.
How long have you been a yogi, and what does that mean?
Let's see. Well, I suppose technically now I've been a yogi for about 20 years. And what does that mean to me?
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean to me? It's a myriad of things, really. I think first and foremost, it means that my life all things in my life revolve around the search for finding spirit, both within myself and without myself. And so, and I suppose what you can boil that down to is living in a state of superconsciousness, more so than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And so the things I choose to surround myself with, whether it's in my work life, my personal life, my spiritual life, and I put spiritual life in quotations because it's all that. Everything I do, I choose to make part of my spiritual life and cohesive with the search for superconsciousness and learning how to live in that state of mind. So whether that's a higher awareness, or maybe one day it's feeling more love, maybe one day it's feeling more compassion, maybe one day it's feeling more joy and happiness, but all those various aspects to living in a state of communion with spirit and then sharing that. Yeah.
So how did you that's a beautiful answer, by the way. Take us back to 20-year-old Christian. What's his experience of life? How do you come to this? How do you come to this?
Well, the first 20 years were sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I think in that order. And so, yeah, I mean, it was just a regular old American lifestyle. It was all three of those things. I played guitar in rock bands, the rock and roll part. And then being a young person in America, there's going to be lots of sex and drugs. And that's just what my life was. I was introduced to the path of yoga and our personal path of self-realization through Yogananda as a very young person. I think I was about 4 or 5 years old when my parents started going to the Ananda Center in Sacramento. But by no means was it a regular part of our life. I have maybe 4 memories of being a little kid going to the center, but those few memories were enough to where when the cosmic light bulb finally turned on, there was a significance of having been introduced to this path, and that significance I just could not turn away from. It was just right in front of my face.
What is it about those handful of memories that stands out?
I mean, so one of them is just staring at the altar and staring at the picture of Babaji. I don't know what it was about Babaji, but I would just stare at that picture the entire time.
Did you know who Babaji was?
I had no idea who any of them were. Not a single one of them. I didn't know what was going on at all. The other memory is being blessed by Ananta, who was the minister. He and Marie were the ministers at the time. And, you know Ananta, he's a giant of a person, both physically and spiritually. And so when you're a little 5-year-old kid, he's that much bigger. And so during the Festival of Light, I remember walking up and him blessing me, still having no idea what's going on. The other memory would be a couple occasions in Sunday school with Laura, the Sunday school teacher, who is still the Sunday school teacher now. How many years later, 35 years later, is still teaching Sunday school because her laugh is infectious. It is joyful. It is beautiful. And just a couple memories with her and the other kids, but that laughter. So it wasn't like there was a specific moment in any one of those moments that but there was something about those moments that were significant enough. Also coupled with reading the autobiography Yogi around that same time in my early 20s and tuning in to superconsciousness and understanding that reality is so much more different than I've been told or taught to believe in or to be, and life is so much more vast, so much more magical than what you're brought up believing in school. You know, you go to school, it's numbers and facts and you know, it's
gets a little dry after a while.
Oh my goodness gracious!
It's not what life's about. So you use this word twice now, superconsciousness. What does that word mean to you? Because I think it's something that everybody experiences slightly different.
I think there's a lot of different levels to it. And so depending on where one is in their life, in their search for spirit, superconsciousness is going to have a different meaning to them. I think simple happiness. I mean, people think of happiness as being simple, and I should take that back because it's not simple. Happiness is a beautiful thing, and I think that's one level of superconsciousness. The ability to be happy is, I think, a very important aspect of superconsciousness. Choosing to be happy, not letting your happiness be a thing that happens.
Right.
Passively. It's like, no, I can actively choose to be happy. At the highest bit, it's that experience of oneness with all creation. So, you know, you're talking about, there's a wide swath of reality there. And so I was fortunate enough in my early 20s to have some very profound moments of superconsciousness where it completely changed my life in an instant, where I went from living the sex, drugs, and rock and roll to one day realizing that, oh, I'm a devotional person. I'm someone who can no longer go their life without realizing that the only purpose is to live in that super consciousness. That's the only way to go, which was, you know, a hard 180. That wasn't,
sounds like it,
that wasn't, that took some time to understand and to become grounded in, and to understand that it's a gradual progression. Because when you do have those experiences, you want to hold on to them forever. And you start to perhaps go about it in the wrong way sometimes.
Right.
And then you realize, no, this is something that I have to do naturally, one day at a time, one breath at a time, and it will happen when it happens. But super consciousness, it's that state of being where everything in life just all the worldly ideas of life, of what we have been told is important, melt away. And the only thing that's left is a state of being where it's just pure consciousness, joy, love, compassion, power, light, and you just are that. And I feel so fortunate. I have had those glimpses. And I wouldn't say that they were the end result. It was a doorway opening. And I got to have that glimpse of, oh, that's where we're headed.
So you could actually pinpoint one or two little experience, well, not little, but brief,
moments.
even
Yeah.
moments, experiences that were actually a pivot point for you.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it took me a long time to kind of, how do I want to phrase it? It took me a long time to absorb those moments, come to an understanding of those moments, and how to really integrate those moments into my day-to-day, because I couldn't go on living the way I had been living.
Right.
And not to say the way I was living was bad per se. It's not like I was a bad person. It wasn't like I was going around cheating and stealing and anything like that, you know? It's like I was a good human being, but it's all of a sudden realizing that there's only one purpose to it all. And that takes a while to understand. At least it did for me. Maybe I'm just more dim than others, but like I don't think I ever uttered the word devotion in my entire life. It took me actually a few years to understand a lot of the struggle I went through integrating all this into my life was the fact that I'm a devotional person. It's just like, oh, that longing, that pain is that devotion to knowing that here I am stuck in this confined body that's just, whatever it is, its goofy self, and it's not who I am. Who I am is this spirit, is this consciousness of freedom and of love and light that's boundless and endless. And now I'm like, okay, but here I am. What is
how
this?
do I go about this task? There's a few really, I think, profound ideas. One of them being having a clear vision and direction for life. I feel like that's so missing in most people's lives. And what do you think that adds to your life, having that clear goal? What does that mean to you?
That's a really interesting question. I think it simplifies a lot. Because it simplifies things because on one side, you realize it doesn't matter what you do outwardly. Because if you're bringing the consciousness of spirit and the spirit of service to the thing you're doing, it doesn't matter if you're scrubbing toilets, digging a ditch, fixing a greenhouse, whatever it might be, you're doing it with that thought of spirit flowing through you, and that you're doing it for spirit, for the thankfulness, for the ability to be able to do it. I feel very honored that I have a lot of skills. I'm a handy person, and I feel so fortunate for that because it means I get to serve my guru in a myriad of ways. And so it can simplify one's life because, what does Spirit want me to do today? Does Spirit want me to do X, Y, or Z?
Yeah.
Or maybe it's, W. I don't know.
Yeah, something I haven't even thought about yet.
Exactly.
I think that's something that's lacking. I don't know if it's especially important for men, but to have some sort of clear vision, goal for your life. Otherwise, you kind of wander through life. And
yeah, wandering is not fun. It's not fun.
It's got its perks at sometimes. But
sometimes it does. So when I first moved to the Sacramento community in Rancho Cordova, I was working at this guitar shop, and it's always been a passion is music and working on instruments and building them, and it got to a point where the energy in the shop became, it wasn't conducive to the lifestyle I was trying to set for myself, which was a spiritual mindset and a spiritually guided life. And it's like, I need to quit. I didn't want to, but it was something I had to do. I had no game plan whatsoever. It was just, I know this is something I had to do. And Ananta at the time, who was still leading the colony with Maria in Sacramento, said, well, do you want to work for me? And I said, well, I would love to. And so it was great because I didn't necessarily have a direction. It was every day was a new day. I was serving the guru, though, and that was the direction.
Right.
It wasn't like I was just flitting off and about, just scrolling on my phone. Then again, I didn't have a phone to scroll with.
We won't say what year
because this was a while ago.
and
So even though my worldly direction seemed to have just stopped cold, which in a sense it did, my spiritual direction took hold. And really, that's the only direction that matters. Outwardly, great, whatever. It didn't matter. And it was really fun because it was just every day, every week, every month was something a little bit different. But it was done with that spirit where living in that unknown of the outwardly manifestation I was able to improve upon my intuition and my ability to live in the moment and go like, today's another day.
Yeah.
Whether it's Monday, Tuesday, Sunday, Saturday, it doesn't matter. It's a day, and it's a day to serve. Cool. Let's do that.
It certainly sounds like it can really simplify things.
Oh,
yeah. I feel like one of the other things that you touched on was, where was it? I just had it. One step at a time. And I feel like with different people that I've talked to, they get to this point in their life where they don't know, all they know is something needs to change. And Spirit doesn't seem to give you the 10-year plan.
Well, it's like life happens while we're busy making plans. It's the only plan one should, especially, for the true seeker, it's like, make the plan for super consciousness. Make that your plan. But that's the only thing. It's if you have a work to do, an outward work to do, and you feel guided that this is a good thing to do outwardly in the world, great. Pursue it. That's a beautiful thing. We should do beautiful things. We should do wonderful things. Whether it's starting a business or going to school or whatever. I mean, there's so many beautiful things one can do in this life. You bring Spirit into it. But it is one day at a time, one step at a time. If you make Spirit the overarching goal, the overarching reality, and you realize that this is the only reality that truly matters, is my cultivation of Spirit within myself. And then you take that and you move forward with whatever it is. So like for me, I've always had a passion for building guitars and other various stringed instruments. So I bring Spirit into that. I would be 10 times, 20 times more successful if I was just in the world only building guitars, only doing that. My name would be all over websites and forums and all this stuff, but it's like, it's so not important because that isn't the point of my life, is to be a guitar builder. It is something I do. If a guitar is to be built and it's the right time to build it, then that's what I will do. But if someone calls me and says, hey, I need help with my harmonium. Hey, I need help moving this couch. Hey, can you help me dig this ditch? Cool. There's someone who needs some help with their life. Why not help them? And so I don't know how I got onto that tangent, but but it's like the outward. If there is that outward thing that one feels guided to go do, great, move forward. But also know that like your trajectory may not be the trajectory of Spirit either. You put one foot in front of the other, but you're also kind of stepping back a little bit and listening. Okay, this is what I'm going to do today. You set that intention and you move forward and you start doing. But then every now and then you sit back and you go, okay, is this still what I should be doing? To be able to use one's intuition to feel that out. Is this how I'm supposed to do this today? Or how am I supposed to do this today? The how is probably more important than the what in all things. How am I going to do this today? That is way more important than the what, always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you mentioned intuition, which I think is, for everybody, whether you're on a spiritual path or not, something that we should be actively cultivating. And it sounds like we could do this in any activity all the time. And I think so that's one thing. Another thing you've mentioned several times is Ananta, who I know also, and I know I think it's fair to say you'd call him your mentor.
Oh, yeah.
And I think those are a few things. One is having that clear vision in life, and the other one is embracing mentors and having mentors.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that for a second? Just like, what role has he played in your life? I know that's a big question.
Yeah, that's a big question. I mean,
the value of a mentor.
So, any worthwhile thing in life worth pursuing, I think it's really important to have those mentors, guides, teachers to help show you the way forward. And not to say you can't learn something on your own. Of course, we all can. People teach themselves how to play guitar every day. Mitch Hedberg, a deceased comic, has a great joke about that. I taught myself how to play guitar. I shouldn't have done that. I was a really bad teacher. And so there,
there's a lot of truth to that.
There's a lot of truth to that joke. He uses a little bit more salty language, but And so, how more important than, out of all things in life, that search for spirit and for one's own higher self. Out of all things, I can't ever imagine that search alone. By myself, in my apartment in East Sacramento, trying to tune into superconsciousness by myself. No, that's not happening. And I feel very fortunate that I did have a guide to just walk me through the subtleties. Because the spiritual path is about subtleties. It's so straightforward, but it's also very subtle. So having someone who's walked the path for decades, and by the time I got on the path, Ananta had been meditating for 30 years. And so to have someone who has that much experience meditating, serving, and tuning their consciousness to superconsciousness is invaluable. Where you're having a bad day and you show up to work in the community and you're just in this mood, and their state of mind and their magnetism is enough to just turn it around like that. And it's the same with anything. When I was working in that guitar shop, after I quit, by the way, I did start going back and working there again because I did have a good relationship with the owner. And I came to a point where I was also strong enough in my own spiritual life where I could go back into that scenario and be of service. But it did take stepping away from it for a while before I could go back to it. And I think that's also another important thing is worldly endeavors are a beautiful thing if you can bring spirit into it, but sometimes it means stepping away from them for a while to gain strength in oneself to be able to stay true to the path. And I just wanted to touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, no, it's important because we're so steeped in worldly endeavors all the time.
From day one.
From day one, essentially, yeah. So it's to have that dedicated time where you really just focus and try and steep yourself into whatever your chosen path is, and then once your feet are set a little more, to be able to mix again.
And you think about it, that's like what college is. You're steeping yourself into a thing. You're not, if you're lucky, you're not going to work, you're not doing those other things. You just get to dive into this subject of study. And so it's a little bit, I would say, more important with the spiritual path because it goes against the grain of the way the world is set up. And so I think it's very crucial to be able to, if one can at all, and I would urge to anyone, if you can, step aside from whatever worldly duty you're doing and find a way to dive into a spiritual path and a spiritual way of living for as long as you can. So when you do go back into the world, you go, oh, okay, I am a new person. You're more of yourself than you've ever been, but you're version 2.0 or 3.0. And a huge part of that is having a mentor, having someone to talk to who's gone through the ups and the downs and the sideways movements that life throws at you.
Yeah.
And life, especially when you get onto the spiritual path, life, it's interesting. Life will throw you opportunities, worldly opportunities, at the same time you're getting onto one's own spiritual path. I've seen it happen to so many people where they find their guru and they go, this is it. This is what I've been longing for. And then all of a sudden, a new job promotion pops up over here. A new thing goes over there. And all of a sudden, they've got that decision. Spirit, world. And, you know, I'd say the world oftentimes wins, probably more often than I'd care to admit. And it's a bummer because it just is. Yeah. Because this spiritual path makes everything so much better.
Yeah, I think maybe people don't realize you can, when you choose the spiritual first, you can come back around to that other thing and still do it and enjoy it much more.
And still do it, and you enjoy it so much more because you're enjoying it with the love of spirit. You're enjoying it with the love of everything. I mean, literally, it's everything with love. You know, it's not just like a dry intellectual thing that I do enjoy doing. Intellect's a beautiful thing, and do it with that intellect, but you bring in that love and that joy of what the thing has to offer, and the ability to enjoy it, and the ability. It's everything. It's just so much better. So much better.
All right, well, we have time for one more question, and what would you say? What's Uncle Christian's wisdom for somebody, that 20-year-old that has that one next step right in front of them that they can't see 20 years later? What's your message to them?
Well, okay, what's my message? The easy path is not necessarily going to be the best path forward. And from my experience with the spiritual path, especially for someone who's in their early 20s, going back to early 20s Christian, it was a very painful time in my life because it was stepping away from so many things I loved and people I loved because I knew spirit was the only thing that did matter. And if I didn't step away from the things I loved, I wouldn't have become the true seeker I wanted to be. And when you know what the truth is and how to search for that truth, just do it. just it will be painful at first, but it will be so liberating in the long run. The path and the search for spirit in oneself is going to make everything better. And sure, there might be those moments of pain because you want to be able to go hang out with your buddies at the bar or at the show or whatever it is. And you'll have moments where you go, but it's not going to hold the same joy as it used to. It just doesn't. And eventually it will, but you have to get firmly planted on the path first. Like now I can go to festivals and I set up a guitar booth and I hang out with my friends and oftentimes I'm the only sober person there. And it's okay though because I get to enjoy it through their joy too. And it's fun. But I enjoy it so much more through the lens of spirit than I do through, you know, substance A, B, and C. You know, as much fun as those things are, I'm not going to say they're not fun. That's why I did them.
Right. That's why they're still around.
You know, but it takes you out of your own sense or your own center. And not to say that they can't also be tools, because sometimes they can be tools for understanding a moment in life, but ultimately you have to come at it from your own willpower and from your own sense of self. And so just gather up that courage and do what you know is right. And it's going to be different for everybody. but the courage to move forward and to seek Spirit and to devote one's life to it, it will never disappoint. It can't. I think it's impossible for it to disappoint. I don't know a single person who's dedicated their life to Spirit and is disappointed. I don't know a single person. I know hundreds and hundreds of people who have done it, and they're all so happy for have done it. It's amazing. Give me one other thing where that is the case.
Wow.
I can't think of it.
Well, that's beautiful, and I want to continue talking about this. I'll have to have you back again. We're just getting started, but that's a beautiful message. Once you know the way forward, don't hesitate. So,
dive in both feet.
Well, thank you so much. That's all for today. See you next time.
See you, friends.
Thanks, Chris.
Anytime.